everyone, this is my overview of the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah was a prophet, which meant he received messages from God, and it was his job to faithfully relay those messages to the intended audience. Jeremiah was assisted by a scribe called Baruch. The events in the book of Jeremiah take place over a 40-year period from 626 to 586 BC. It is a prophetic book because it covers current and predicted future events within the kingdom of Judah. Now, within this book, there are dual themes of judgment and hope. The people of Judah were being unfaithful in their relationship with God. They were ignoring the law, they were worshipping other gods, and it meant that the most vulnerable in society were not being looked after. As a result, God was planning to bring judgment on the kingdom of Judah by sending Babylon to make the land desolate, and where the people of Judah would be sent into exile for 70 years to serve the Babylonians. As you can imagine, this was a highly unpopular message. Jeremiah faced opposition from all members of society. Other prophets directly spoke out against him. He was falsely accused, he was in prison, attempts were made on his life, and he was eventually kidnapped and forcibly taken to Egypt. Ultimately, he was ignored. Yet in spite of the attempts to silence Jeremiah, the warnings God issued through him did come to pass. The Babylonians did lay siege to the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem fell and the people were taken into exile. In chapters 46 to 51, the content covers God's judgment of the surrounding nations. The reason why God's judgment was coming on the nations around Judah was because they were prideful, they were greedy, they worshipped idols, and they put themselves in direct opposition to God. And that also included Babylon itself. This all makes for difficult reading, but there is hope and mercy. The warnings issued by God were done across decades, where time and time again God called on his people to return to them in order to avoid the coming disaster. God states a number of times that the attack by Babylon will not mean a full end to Judah. And those who are taken into exile will eventually return to the land. In spite of their unfaithfulness, God says there is hope for Israel and Judah, and that God plans to make a new everlasting covenant between himself and his people. God also talks about raising up a righteous branch, a king who will rule with wisdom, justice and righteousness, and these are prophetic references to the coming of his son Jesus. Chapter 52 is a bit of a double-sided affair, where it recounts the fall of Jerusalem and the changing fortune of the exiled king Jehoiakim. Jehoiakim had been a prisoner in Babylon for decades and then was eventually freed and found favour with the king and was able to sit at his table for the rest of his days. I think having these two events to end the book of Jeremiah are important because it's a key reminder that God did keep his word about his judgment, but also if he can be trusted to keep his word and do as he says he will do about his judgment, we can also trust that he will do what he says he will do regarding the good things he promises. My favourite verse from this book comes from chapter 9 verse 24, and it says, "Let him who boasts boast in this, that he understands and knows me, that I am the Lord who practices steadfast love, justice and righteousness in the earth, for in these things I delight, declares the Lord." Hope that's been helpful.